Have you ever reached a point where everything you believed in began to feel distant? Where the noise of pain drowned out your prayers, and even hope, once a fire in your heart, now flickered like a candle in the wind? Have you walked through days so heavy that you questioned whether your faith still had the power to carry you? And what if I told you that in the middle of your exhaustion, when your soul is most worn out, the teachings of Jesus weren't just meant to be remembered, but to completely transform your life from the inside out? There's something hidden in his words, something beyond the verses you've heard 1,000 times. It's not just theology, it's not just comfort. It's a kind of spiritual medicine, so precise and powerful that it knows how to reach even the deepest cracks of a fractured heart. This message is for you, especially if you're hanging by a thread, because his teachings were never designed for perfect people. They were forged in dust and tears, meant to reach those who have nothing left but a whisper of faith. Jesus spoke, not to impress crowds, but to awaken souls. And today, that awakening has your name on it. There's a reason why this video found you today. It's not an accident. It's not coincidence. It's grace interrupting your routine. You're about to discover how the simple yet sacred teachings of Christ carry the power to heal your anxiety, restore your peace, and reignite your faith, even in the darkest days. But I need to ask you for something first. If you truly want to receive the depth of this message, take a moment and like this video, not for the algorithm, but as a symbol that you're opening your heart. Subscribe if you feel something stirring in you, as if something ancient is calling you back home. And most importantly, comment below with the phrase, "I am hearing his voice." Do it as an act of trust, because every comment becomes a seed. Every interaction becomes a whisper that echoes into someone else's night. You're not just helping this message reach others, you're helping yourself believe again. You are part of something sacred. This isn't just a video, it's a divine encounter, and it's time to begin. Let's walk together. Let his voice echo into the silence of your fear. Let his teachings become the map out of your pain, because if you stay with me until the end of this journey, you will not be the same. And I say this with reverence. What you're about to hear may be the answer to the prayer you couldn't even speak aloud. If this is already stirring your heart, write in the comments, "I am hearing his voice," and share this with someone who's walking through the fire. You may become the lifeline they never expected. Let's continue. It began with a voice. A voice not like the thunderous declarations of kings or the rigid commands of lawgivers, but a voice that spoke with both weight and tenderness. When Jesus opened his mouth to teach, something shifted in the atmosphere, because his words carried not just information, but transformation. One of his first public messages was not shouted from a palace, but spoken on a mountainside to the weary, the broken, the curious, and it began with a sentence that shattered every human expectation. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Do you realize what he was saying? He wasn't blessing the powerful. He wasn't uplifting those who had it all together. He was honoring the empty, the crushed, the ones who had nothing left. This is the beginning of how his teachings start to renew your faith, because they invert the world's values. While everything around you says you need to be strong, impressive, successful, Jesus comes and whispers, "It's okay to be weak. It's okay to fall apart. That's where my kingdom begins." Insight 1. Weakness is not your disqualification. It's your doorway. When your spirit feels poor, when your prayers feel like broken fragments, Jesus doesn't look away. He leans closer. He calls you blessed, not because of your pain, but because of what pain makes possible: openness, humility, surrender. He sees your posture of collapse as the posture of a heart ready to be filled. Insight 2. The kingdom is not a future place. It's a present invitation. So many imagine faith as something postponed, that one day when they've healed or when they've learned more or sinned less, then God will finally meet them. But Jesus' words tell a different story. He brings the kingdom to the broken now. He brings heaven to those who have no strength left to fake it. That means today, yes, this moment, you are closer to spiritual breakthrough than you ever imagined. Insight 3. Jesus teaches through reversal. Throughout his ministry, Jesus constantly flipped the script. The first will be last. The meek inherit the earth. Those who mourn will be comforted. Why? Because he knew the human heart. He knew how the systems of this world grind people down. So, his teachings are not moral advice for the elite. They're rescue lines for the drowning. Insight 4. His words are not meant to be admired. They're meant to be absorbed. It's one thing to read scripture. It's another to let it read you. When Jesus speaks, he is not asking you to applaud his wisdom. He's inviting you to breathe it in, to let it reshape how you see yourself, your struggles, your past. Blessed are the poor in spirit. That's not just a beatitude. That's a new identity for your weary soul. And maybe today, you're spiritually tired. Maybe you've prayed and nothing changed. Maybe you've tried to be strong and it only left you lonelier. But what if that emptiness is the precise place Jesus wants to begin his work in you? What if he's not asking for your strength but your surrender? Ask yourself now, what would it mean if your emptiness was the entry point for God's greatest work in your life? Take a breath. Let that question settle deep. And if this spoke to your heart, say it aloud or write it down below. I know he hears me, because he does. And because what he started speaking on that mountainside, he's still speaking now to you. Share this message with someone who feels like they're at the end. Let them know. The end is often the place God begins. Subscribe, and let these words walk with you daily, because they are not just old teachings. They are living truths, still healing, still calling, still renewing. Let's go deeper. Imagine standing in front of someone who knows every part of your story, every failure, every lie, every broken promise. How would you feel? Exposed, ashamed, desperate to run away? Now imagine that this person looks into your eyes and doesn't condemn you, doesn't turn away, doesn't bring up your worst moment. Instead, he kneels beside you, touches the dirt of your life, and says, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." John 8:11. These words weren't said in theory. They were spoken by Jesus to a woman moments away from being stoned to death, caught in sin, dragged into the public square, shamed and accused. But what did Jesus do? He stooped down. He didn't stand with the accusers. He didn't quote rules. He wrote in the sand. And with those few simple words, he unlocked a revolution of mercy that still echoes into your life today, because the heart of Jesus is not only about truth, it's about timing. He gives you truth after he's given you mercy. He tells you to walk away from destruction only after he's walked into your shame and set you free. Insight 1. Mercy precedes transformation. So many people try to fix themselves before they feel worthy of coming to God, but Jesus flips that. He extends mercy first, saying, "I see your mess. I still choose you." He doesn't wait for you to be clean before touching you. He touches you so you can be clean. Insight 2. Your worst moment isn't the end of your story. The woman in John 8 probably thought it was over. She expected stones. She received freedom. What if today you're standing in the middle of a situation you caused, a mistake too heavy to hide? And what if Jesus isn't stepping away from you, but stepping in with mercy? Insight 3. Jesus defends you when others define you. The crowd had already written her story: sinner, adulteress, unworthy. But Jesus redefined her by defending her. That's what he does for you too, even when your mind accuses you, even when shame whispers that you're too far gone. He becomes your defender, reminding you you are more than your lowest moment. Insight 4. True faith begins when you believe He loves you anyway. It's easy to believe God loves you when you're doing well, but transformation happens when you believe He loves you even when you're not, even when you're caught, confused, collapsed, even when you feel like the least deserving. Because in that place, love becomes real. Maybe right now you feel unworthy. Maybe there's a mistake that clings to your memory, a regret that still steals your sleep. But mercy is not a reward for the good. It is the miracle for the desperate. And Jesus is still stooping down into the dust of your story, not to accuse, but to lift you up. Let these words settle deep into your heart. Neither do I condemn you. And if those words touched something inside you, leave this as a declaration below. I am hearing His voice. Let others see it. Let it echo. You don't know who needs to read it and realize they're not alone in needing mercy. Like this message and share it now, because someone you know feels buried by guilt. Be the one who brings them a hand instead of a stone. And don't stop here. Stay with this journey, because the mercy that saved you is just the beginning of the life He's rebuilding inside you. There's a moment in Scripture that echoes the emotional chaos many of us face daily. The story is short, almost deceptively simple, but it holds a spiritual key for the days when everything seems to fall apart. Jesus and His disciples are in a boat. The wind starts howling, the sea becomes violent, the boat is nearly submerged. And where is Jesus? He's asleep. Mark 4:35-41. In the middle of a storm that's threatening their lives, Jesus is resting. This moment infuriates some people. It's confusing, terrifying, and painfully familiar, because many of us feel exactly that way, in the middle of chaos, crying out to God, and all we hear is silence. Teacher, don't you care if we drown? That question echoes through centuries. It's not just the disciples' cry, it's ours. Don't you care that I'm falling apart? Don't you care that my family is unraveling? Don't you care that I'm exhausted and no one sees it? But then comes the turning point. Jesus stands up, speaks to the storm, and everything obeys. Insight 1. Jesus rests in storms. He knows He can calm. He wasn't sleeping because He didn't care. He was sleeping because He was certain that the waves would never overcome His presence, certain that the storm could never erase the promise, let us go to the other side. That same certainty lives in your story. Your storm didn't catch God off guard. His silence isn't absence, it's confidence. Insight 2. The silence of Jesus is not abandonment, it's an invitation to deeper faith. When God seems silent, He's often inviting you into the part of your relationship where trust is refined. Anyone can believe when the sun is shining, but faith matures in the storm. The question isn't, where is God? The real question is, will you still believe even when He's quiet? Because true faith isn't measured by how loud the miracles are. It's measured by your ability to keep rowing, even when you don't see land. Insight 3. Peace doesn't always mean the storm ends. It means the storm no longer owns you. Jesus calmed the wind, yes, but what He truly wanted to calm was the fear inside them. He asks, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? He wasn't angry. He was teaching. He was revealing that inner peace isn't circumstantial, it's spiritual. You can walk through the worst day of your life with a still soul, if you truly know who's in your boat. Insight 4. Your fear doesn't disqualify your faith. It defines where faith must grow. God isn't disappointed in your fear. He uses it as a starting point. Each moment of panic, each time you question if He's listening, that's where He steps in with truth. And the truth is this: you are not alone in your storm. You are not forgotten in your chaos. And even if He's silent for a moment, He is still sovereign over everything. If this speaks to your heart, if you're in the middle of something that feels like it could break you, comment now with these words, "I know he hears me." This isn't just a phrase. It's a step of faith. And your step could lead someone else into their own miracle. Subscribe now, because the next truth you hear could be the one that silences your storm. Like and share this, not because it helps us, but because someone out there needs you to be the voice they couldn't find in their darkest hour. Hold on, he's in the boat, and the storm is already listening. There are moments in life when everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers. You try to hold on, to faith, to hope, to some sense of direction, but the more you try, the more it seems like everything is falling apart. It's in these moments, the fragile, quiet, and painful ones, that the teachings of Jesus become more than words. They become fire. Not fire that destroys, but fire that purifies, awakens, and lights the path when all else is dark. Imagine standing in front of the one who healed the sick, calmed the sea, raised the dead. And yet, rather than performing miracles on command, he speaks, just speaks, and those who have ears to hear burn from within. That's what happened on the road to Emmaus. 2 disciples were walking, talking, broken after the crucifixion. They were grieving the loss of their hope, trying to make sense of a Savior who died like a criminal. But then a man joins them, a man who seems ordinary, until he speaks. He begins explaining the scriptures, opening their minds, connecting everything they thought they knew to something deeper. They don't recognize him until later. But after he disappears, they look at each other and say something haunting and beautiful. Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? This is what the teachings of Jesus do. They don't just teach, they ignite. They don't just inform, they awaken dormant places in the soul. The teachings of Jesus are not intellectual commentary. They are weapons against despair, light against deception, and bridges to a life you didn't even realize you were craving. He speaks of the kingdom not as a faraway promise, but as a present reality. The kingdom of God is within you, he said, not in a temple, not in a distant sky, but in the heart, in your stillness, in your surrender. He teaches us that the first shall be last, that the meek inherit, that greatness is found in serving. That purity isn't proven by rule-keeping, but by what flows from the heart. Every one of these teachings subverts the world's logic, and yet they heal us. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," he wasn't romanticizing poverty. He was saying that when you finally come to the end of yourself, when your spirit is emptied of self-sufficiency and pride, then you are ready to receive something that can't be earned, the kingdom. He didn't promise safety. He promised purpose. He didn't promise that the fire wouldn't come. He promised that in the fire, he would be with you. His teachings give you a blueprint, not for escaping life's pain, but for walking through it with power, not for avoiding wounds, but for finding healing in your scars. He said, "Take up your cross and follow me." In other words, embrace the parts of life you'd rather run from. Carry what is heavy, not because suffering is holy in itself, but because what suffering produces in a surrendered heart is something no comfort could ever give you. And when he spoke of love, it wasn't a shallow affection. It was the kind of love that lays itself down, that forgives 70 times 7, that washes the feet of those who betray you. This kind of love is radical, costly, divine. To walk in his teachings is not to memorize phrases or quote verses. It is to allow his voice to dismantle your defenses, expose your hidden wounds, and rebuild you from the inside out. Think of the woman caught in adultery. The law said stone her. The crowd was ready. But Jesus knelt in the dirt and wrote something mysterious. Then he stood and said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And one by one, they dropped their weapons. This is what happens when Jesus speaks. Condemnation dies. Mercy rises, and the person who thought she had no future is sent off with these unforgettable words, "Go and sin no more." Do you see it now? His words aren't just powerful, they're personal. They don't just shape history, they shape identity. He tells you that you are salt even when you feel tasteless, that you are light even when darkness surrounds you, that you are loved even when you feel unlovable, that you are chosen even when the world passes you by. His teaching on forgiveness, for example, is not merely an ethic, it's a revolution of the soul. To forgive those who've wronged you is to break the chains they put on you. It's not weakness, it's a weapon. You forgive not to excuse them, but to free you. He says, "Do not worry about tomorrow." And in those words, every overthinking, overburdened soul finds rest. He doesn't tell you life won't be hard. He tells you that worry won't make it easier. He invites you into a trust so deep you begin to see anxiety as a thief of the joy that faith makes possible. When Jesus taught about prayer, he didn't give a formula. He gave a relationship. He said, "When you pray, say, Father." And that changed everything. No longer do we grovel in fear. Now we speak as children, knowing the heart of the one who hears us. And when he said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours," he wasn't giving a blank check. He was giving access to a realm of divine alignment where your heart beats in rhythm with his will and your desires begin to reflect eternity. The teachings of Jesus are alive. They meet you where you are, but refuse to let you stay there. They confront, they comfort, they expose, they embrace. And the beauty is, you don't have to understand them all to be changed by them. The more you walk with them, the more they walk you out of darkness. Right now, even as you listen, some part of your soul recognizes it. You might not even be able to explain it yet. But something inside is stirring. That's not coincidence. That's calling. If these words are reaching you in a time of confusion or doubt, if you feel like you've been asking God for direction and he's been sending silence, this is the answer in disguise. Go back to the words of Jesus, not just to read, but to listen, not just to listen, but to live. And if this message has spoken even slightly to the place in you that feels forgotten or afraid, do something bold. Declare with your own voice, "Speak to me, Lord." Write it in the comments. Write it for yourself, for your future, for the next person scrolling who needs the courage to stop and listen too. Share this message. Let it be the signpost for someone else's return. Like it, not for numbers, but for visibility. Because the algorithm might be man-made, but the reach can be supernatural. And if this channel is becoming a place where your spirit breathes again, subscribe. You're not joining a feed. You're entering a circle of souls hungry for something real. This isn't content, it's a call. And your yes could be the beginning of your greatest healing. You've likely heard the words of Jesus more times than you can count. Maybe they echo in your memory like familiar melodies. Love your enemies. Do not judge. Ask, and you shall receive. But something profound happens when these words are no longer background noise, when they become the soundtrack to your inner world. Jesus didn't come to impress with complexity. He came to transform with truth. Truth so disarmingly simple, it pierces through your distractions and speaks directly to your wounds. The beauty of Jesus' teachings is in their sacred simplicity. He didn't use grand theories or layers of theology to reach the heart. He told stories. He asked questions. He painted pictures of lilies and sparrows, coins and lamps, vines and branches. Why? Because the deepest truths don't need adornment. They just need to be received. Take, for example, his parables. On the surface, they're simple tales. But when you stop to reflect, they dismantle your assumptions and force you to look at your life through the eyes of eternity. The parable of the mustard seed is one of those quiet revolutions. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, he said, the smallest of all seeds. Yet when it grows, it becomes the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree so that the birds come and perch in its branches. Can you imagine? The entire power of heaven likened to something so small you could lose it between your fingers. Jesus was showing you something radical, that faith, even in its smallest form, has explosive potential, that the beginnings of transformation don't have to look grand. Sometimes they're hidden, fragile, overlooked, but once planted, they grow into shelter, into life, your small decision to believe again. Your quiet prayer whispered through tears, your choice to love when it would be easier to walk away. That's a mustard seed, and in God's hands, it's a miracle in disguise. Or the parable of the lost sheep, where a shepherd leaves 99 just to find the one. Jesus wasn't just talking about a theoretical love, he was talking about you, about the days you feel like you've wandered too far, like grace couldn't possibly stretch that far again. And yet here he comes, through your doubts, through your guilt, through the mess, to carry you back. That's the Jesus who speaks through simplicity and yet touches the deepest complexities of the human soul. Then there's his teaching about the wise and foolish builders. Two men build houses, one on rock, the other on sand. The storm comes and only one house stands. He wasn't warning about storms. He was guaranteeing them. He was saying storms are coming. The question is not if, but on what are you building? So ask yourself, right now, in the quiet corners of your soul, what is the foundation of your life made of? Is it built on approval, on possessions, on plans, or is it built on his words? Words that don't shift with emotion, don't collapse with criticism, don't erode with time. Because when everything else fails, the teachings of Jesus don't. He didn't come to entertain the intellect. He came to awaken the spirit. Even the way he taught about prayer reveals this heartbeat. He said, when you pray, don't babble like pagans. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him. What kind of God says this? A God not obsessed with performance. A God who's more interested in relationship than ritual. He invites you to intimacy, not perfection. He shows you that you don't need to shout to be heard or strive to be seen. You are already known. One of the most haunting teachings of Jesus is this: what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? That one question flips everything. Your priorities, your ambitions, your definitions of success. What does it mean to succeed outwardly while dying inwardly? You chase achievements, recognition, control, but if your soul is neglected, none of it satisfies. Jesus' words here aren't condemnation, they're rescue. A divine interruption to help you realize you were made for more than status or comfort. You were made for connection with the one who created you. And his teaching about worry, it's not just encouragement, it's an invitation to freedom. Do not worry about tomorrow, he says, for tomorrow will worry about itself. In a world addicted to anxiety, Jesus offers an antidote: presence. Not because the future doesn't matter, but because obsessing over what might happen robs you of what is happening. Right now, in this moment, you are breathing. Right now, there is grace available to you. Right now, the Spirit is near, whispering truth, breaking chains, awakening joy. So pause, listen, not with your ears, but with your soul. Jesus' teachings are not burdens to carry, they are keys to unlock. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, real rest. Not the kind that comes from escapism, but the kind that comes from surrender, from laying down your striving, your proving, your masks, and receiving love that doesn't require performance." He teaches us to love not just our friends, but our enemies. Why? Because when you love your enemies, you reclaim your power. You step into a higher kingdom where hate can't control you and bitterness can't define you. Jesus wasn't teaching moral behavior. He was revealing a new reality, a kingdom not made with hands, a revolution of the heart, a transformation from within. And it's available to you now. You don't need to wait until you have your life together. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be open. If you've made it this far in the video, maybe it's because your soul is hungry for something real, something eternal. And maybe, just maybe, these words are not just information, but an invitation. So, if something is stirring in you, if you feel like this message was meant for you in this exact moment, write this in the comments. This word is for me. And then, breathe, let go, receive. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. And your life, yes, your life, is still being written by a God who speaks through silence and transforms through truth. Like this video to make this message louder in the feed of someone who's on the edge. Share it with a soul that's running, low on hope. And if you haven't subscribed yet, let today be the moment you decide, I want more of this. I need to hear him more clearly, because this isn't just a channel, it's a movement, a sanctuary for hearts that still believe there's more. And maybe you're not here by accident. Maybe this is the beginning of something sacred. There are moments when even the strongest heart bends under the weight of life. Days when everything you built seems to unravel. Nights when silence feels louder than prayer. Moments when you ask yourself, where is he now? And in those moments, the teachings of Jesus become more than doctrine. They become survival, an anchor, a shelter in a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control. Jesus never promised us a life without pain. On the contrary, he said, in this world, you will have trouble. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't hide the cost of faith behind prosperity or comfort, but he added something that changes everything. Take heart, for I have overcome the world. Let those words settle in. Not, you might overcome, or it will get better someday, but I have overcome. Past tense, already done. That means that the storm you're facing isn't greater than him. It never was. It never will be. Think of the time Jesus was asleep in the boat while the disciples panicked in the storm. They were professional fishermen, men used to rough waters, and still they feared for their lives. Isn't that just like us? We think we know how to manage our waves until we don't. And where was Jesus, sleeping at peace, not because he didn't care, but because he wasn't afraid? And when they finally woke him up, desperate, accusing, don't you care if we drown? He stood up, rebuked the wind, and spoke to the waves, peace, be still. Can you imagine the scene? Thunder rolling, winds howling, water crashing, and then silence. Not just around them, within them. His peace didn't just still the storm, it invaded their hearts. That's what the words of Jesus do. They don't just inform, they transform. His voice doesn't just calm weather, it calms you. And maybe you've been in your own storm lately. A diagnosis, a betrayal, a heartbreak, a silent heaven. And the temptation is to ask, where is God in all this? But the deeper question, the transforming one, is, can I trust that he's still in the boat, even when he's silent? Jesus teaches us that faith is not the absence of fear. It's the decision to trust in the middle of fear. That's why he said, do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. Not because things aren't troubling, but because your heart has a choice. You may not be able to stop the waves, but you can choose not to drown in them. That's what the woman with the issue of blood did. After 12 years of pain, isolation, and disappointment from everyone who promised healing, she heard about Jesus. And in a moment of raw desperation, she broke every social rule just to touch the edge of his garment. Not even his hand. Just the edge. That's all she needed. And when she did, power left him. Healing flowed into her, and Jesus stopped everything just to look into her eyes and say, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Do you see what's happening here?" She reached in silence. She didn't ask for permission, but her faith made a demand on his presence, and he didn't rebuke her. He affirmed her. That's the Jesus who meets you in your secret pain. The Jesus whose teachings are not distant theology but present hope, who says, even now, your faith is not invisible to me. I see you. Naidas, then there's the teaching of the vine and the branches. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Jesus is showing us something we forget in the grind of life. Fruitfulness isn't about striving, it's about remaining. The strength of the branch doesn't come from its effort, but from its connection. And so he invites you into a rhythm of abiding, of staying close, not visiting occasionally, but living in his presence. Because when you remain in him, peace flows like sap through your soul. Clarity begins to form in the fog. And even when everything external feels chaotic, your internal world remains rooted. He says, come to me, all who are weary. That invitation is for you. Not tomorrow, now. And if you're thinking, but I don't know how, remember, the power is not in how perfect your coming is, but in who you're coming to. Jesus never demanded perfection from his followers. He just asked them to follow. Even Peter, impulsive, brash, unreliable Peter, was called to walk on water. And for a moment, he did. Eyes fixed on Jesus, he defied every law of nature. But the moment his gaze shifted to the wind, he began to sink. Still, Jesus didn't let him drown in his doubt. He reached out and lifted him up. That's who he is. The one who calls you beyond logic, who knows you'll fail, and yet still invites you to walk on impossible waters, because your growth is in the trying. Your healing is in the reaching. Your faith is formed in the falling and found in the rising. Jesus' teachings don't demand that you never sink. They promise that even when you do, he'll reach you, before the waves do. So if your soul has been thirsty for more, if you've been drifting, doubting, or barely holding on, remember this. He is the anchor. He is the calm in your chaos. And his words are not history. They are lifelines, spoken, and still echoing, still healing, still calling you home. And if this resonates with your soul, if you feel like he's speaking directly to you in this moment, don't keep it to yourself. Write in the comments, "Speak to me, Lord." That simple phrase could start a ripple of transformation, not just in your life, but in others who read it. Because this isn't just a video, it's an encounter. Like the video so others can find this in their storm. Subscribe if your heart is saying, I need more of this presence in my life. You don't have to walk through this season alone. There's a place here for you, a community, a refuge, a whisper in the storm that says, peace, be still. There's something profoundly mysterious about the way Jesus chose to teach, not with rules chiseled in stone or lectures from high places, but with stories, parables, quiet, poetic tales that seemed simple on the surface, yet carried entire oceans of truth underneath. Why did he speak that way? Why did he choose metaphor over mandate, story over sermon? Because stories reach the heart when facts fall short. They bypass resistance, defenses, and pride. They don't shout, they whisper. And in that whisper, they awaken something we didn't know was sleeping. That's what the teachings of Jesus do. They don't just teach, they transform, especially in our hardest, most desperate days. Think about the parable of the mustard seed, a tiny, almost invisible seed, smaller than all the others, insignificant, easily overlooked. But Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it becomes the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch in its branches." Why would he compare something so sacred to something so small? Because he was talking to people who felt small, people like you and me, who feel that our faith is too weak, our dreams too distant, our prayers too unanswered. And yet, within, The small, there is potential. Within the silent seed is unstoppable growth. Within you, there is a tree waiting to rise. That parable isn't about horticulture. It's about hope. It's about believing that your beginnings don't define your destiny. That even when your faith feels like a whisper, it carries the DNA of something powerful, if you're willing to plant it and believe. And then there's the parable of the lost sheep. One sheep out of 100 wanders off, gets lost, goes missing, and the shepherd leaves the 99 to find the one. Why? Because you are not just one in the crowd to him. You are not lost in the statistics of suffering. You are not too far gone, too late, too broken. He sees you, and he leaves everything to come find you. That parable isn't sentimental, it's revolutionary. In a world where people are easily replaced, where value is based on performance, Jesus dares to say, "You matter enough for me to come after." If you've ever felt unworthy, overlooked, or forgotten, this is your story. He doesn't just save groups, he saves souls, one by one, heart by heart. And think about this. He didn't say, "The sheep found its way home." No, he said, "The shepherd went out and searched until he found it." Until, which means he's still looking, still pursuing, still calling. And maybe you're not watching this video by accident. Maybe it's his voice reaching you through this screen, this moment, this message. Now recall the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man is beaten, left half dead on the road. Religious men pass him by, too busy, too pure, too detached. But the Samaritan, an outsider, an enemy by cultural standards, stops, tends his wounds, and pays for his healing. Jesus flips the story. The hero isn't who we expect. The love isn't where we'd assume, because he's showing us something profound. Mercy is the true religion of heaven. In the worst days of your life, when people you trusted walk past. Your pain, when even those closest to you don't stop to help. Remember this, there is always a Samaritan walking toward you. And sometimes it's Jesus himself, coming in a way you don't expect, through a person, a word, a video, a quiet prompting in your spirit. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Jesus also calls us to be that Samaritan, to stop for others, to inconvenience ourselves for the broken, to be the answer to someone's desperate prayer. Because healing doesn't only come from receiving, it comes from giving. Now picture the parable of the prodigal son. You know the story. A son demands his inheritance early, basically wishing his father dead, runs off, wastes everything, ends up feeding pigs, and then decides to go home just to beg for a job as a servant. He rehearses his apology, walks back in shame, and what happens? The father sees him from a distance, runs toward him, embraces him, and throws a celebration. That's the gospel. Not just that God forgives, but that he runs. He doesn't wait for you to grovel. He doesn't keep score. He doesn't shame you into repentance. He meets you in your return and restores you to your place, even when you smell like pigs, even when you've lost everything, even when your faith is gone. That's what Jesus wanted you to understand, that the love of the Father isn't logical, it's lavish. So if you're in a pig pen of regret, shame, addiction, or self-hate, know this, the road back home has already been paved. The door is open, and the Father isn't just waiting, he's watching. These parables are not just bedtime stories, they are invitations to come back, to heal, to hope again. And maybe you feel too broken to believe it. Maybe the pain in your chest is louder than the truth in these words. That's okay. Don't pretend. Just bring that pain to the one who already knows it. The teachings of Jesus don't shame the hurting. They dignify them. They don't dismiss questions. They welcome them. He taught in parables not to confuse you, but to draw you in, to let the story become your mirror, to show you who he is and who you can become. So if this is stirring something in you, even if you can't name it yet, don't push it away. Comment below, "This word is for me," not because it's a ritual, but because it's a declaration, a step, a mustard seed planted in public, like the video if this message brought light into a dark space inside you. Subscribe and join others who, just like you, are learning to listen, to follow, to trust, even when it's hard. Because this isn't the end of your story, it's the parable that becomes your prophecy. Jesus didn't only speak in stories, he also gave commands, clear, powerful, sometimes strange instructions. And if we're honest, they often felt impossible. Love your enemies. Turn the other cheek. Forgive 70 times 7. These aren't casual suggestions. They're radical, soul-shaking imperatives. But here's what most people miss. His commands are not burdens. They are bridges, not weights to carry, but doors to walk through. Behind every instruction is a healing waiting to happen. Take the command, do not be afraid. It appears more than any other in the Bible, not because fear isn't real, but because it doesn't have to be final. Jesus knew that fear locks us in prisons we build with our own hands. And he came to offer a key. When he says, do not be afraid, he's not denying our storms. He's standing in them with us, and his presence becomes the calm we crave. Look at the moment when Peter saw Jesus walking on water. Peter, caught between awe and terror, calls out, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And Jesus simply says, come. That's it. One word, one invitation, one command. And Peter steps out of the boat. He walks on water, not because he had faith in himself, but because he obeyed the voice that called him. The miracle didn't begin with the water, it began with the word. Some of you are waiting for the storm to stop before you move. But what if Jesus is saying, come? What if your breakthrough isn't on the shore, but in the middle of the waves? And yes, Peter sinks. Yes, he doubts. But even in that, Jesus reaches down and pulls him up. Because obedience isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's about moving toward the voice, even if your knees are shaking. Now think about the woman caught in adultery, dragged before Jesus by men ready to stone her. According to the law, she should have been condemned, silenced, killed. But Jesus kneels down, writes in the dirt, and then stands to speak these words that echoed through eternity. Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone. And one by one they leave, until it's just her, alone, exposed, expecting judgment. But Jesus looks at her and says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Notice the order. He gives mercy first, then the command, neither do I condemn you. That's grace. Go and sin no more. That's the path to freedom. He doesn't deny her sin, but he doesn't define her by it either. He lifts her above it. How many of us have it backwards? We think we need to clean ourselves up before we come to him. But Jesus says, come first, and I will restore you. He didn't wait for the woman to prove herself. He gave her a future while others tried to bury her in the past. That's the kind of command that transforms, one that calls you forward, not crushes you under shame. Then there's the instruction to forgive. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means refusing to carry the poison any longer. When Jesus says forgive, he's not asking you to excuse evil. He's asking you to break the chain. Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only kills you. Jesus forgave the very ones who nailed him to the cross. Not because they deserved it, but because he was free. And he wants that same freedom for you. Maybe you've been carrying something for too long, a betrayal, a wound, a word that still echoes in your mind. And maybe forgiveness feels impossible. But it isn't. It begins with one whispered prayer. Lord, I want to forgive. Help me. He never asked you to do it alone. And remember this, Jesus never commands without also equipping. Now, look at another command. Take up your cross and follow me. It sounds like a call to suffering, and in some ways it is. But more than that, it's a call to surrender, a call to trust, a call to let go of what you think life should be and step into what life can be with Him. The cross is not just a symbol of death, it's the passage to resurrection. What if the thing you're resisting, the thing you're afraid will break you, is actually the thing that will make you? What if your obedience, even in the dark, even when it doesn't make sense, is preparing you for a light you can't even imagine? That's how Jesus works. He gives commands that sound heavy but lead to healing, commands that feel impossible but open up the miraculous, commands that confront our brokenness but also restore our wholeness. When He says, "Follow me," He's not promising an easy road. He's promising His presence on the road. And when the one you're following walked through death and came out alive, what is there to fear? So ask yourself, which command of Jesus are you resisting right now? What word has He already spoken to your heart that you've been too afraid to obey? Maybe it's time to trust again, to walk, to forgive, to surrender. If this message is confirming something inside of you, leave this comment below. I know He hears me, not for me, for you, as a step, as a declaration, as a spiritual anchor in a chaotic world. Like this video if you feel something stirring. Subscribe if you want to keep walking this path with others who are hungry for truth, not just comfort, because this journey isn't about control, it's about surrender. And the moment you take that step, everything begins to change. There's something deeply unsettling about waiting, especially when you're waiting for a miracle, a breakthrough, an answer, and silence is all you get. You pray, you cry, you believe, and still nothing moves, nothing shifts. The heavens feel closed, and the silence is deafening. But what if I told you that some of the most powerful miracles of Jesus didn't begin with action, but with delay? Think about Lazarus. Jesus loved him, loved Mary, loved Martha, but when He heard Lazarus was sick, He didn't rush. He waited 2 days on purpose. To everyone else, that delay looked like abandonment, like failure, like Jesus didn't care. But Jesus wasn't late. He was setting the stage. Because when He finally arrived, Lazarus wasn't just sick, he was dead, buried, wrapped in grave clothes. And that's when Jesus speaks one of the most powerful truths ever recorded. I am the resurrection and the life. Then, with a voice that shattered death's silence, He calls out, "Lazarus, come forth!" And the man who was 4 days dead walks out of his tomb. Now ask yourself this, would that miracle have meant the same if Jesus had healed Lazarus while he was still sick? Would the impact have been as profound? Sometimes God waits, not because He's punishing you, but because He's preparing something greater than you imagined. His delay is not denial, it's design. We want immediate healing. He wants eternal impact. You see, the gap between your prayer and His response isn't empty. It's sacred space. It's where your faith is forged, where trust is tested, where something deeper than answers begins to grow. Jesus did the same with the woman with the issue of blood. 12 years of suffering, doctors, disappointments, isolation. She was unclean by law, rejected by society, invisible in the crowd. But she didn't wait for an invitation. She reached. She told herself, if I can just touch the edge of His cloak, I will be healed. And in a single moment of desperate faith, her life changed. Jesus felt the power leave Him. He stopped in the middle of a crowd and asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples didn't understand. But Jesus wasn't asking for His sake. He was asking for hers. Because it wasn't just about physical healing, it was about identity, about restoration. He looks at her and says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." Do you see what He did? He didn't just heal her body, He healed her shame. He gave her a name, daughter, not outcast, not broken, not forgotten. Some of you have been waiting so long that you've started to believe the silence means you're not seen, that maybe your prayers are too small, too late, too unworthy. But hear this, you are not invisible to God. Your pain is not ignored. Your faith, however fragile, is not wasted. He sees you, even in the crowd, even in the chaos, even in your weakness. Another time, a Roman centurion came to Jesus, pleading for his servant. But instead of going with him, Jesus just spoke a word, "Go. It will be done just as you believed." And in that very hour, across the distance, the servant was healed. Notice the pattern. Jesus doesn't always move the same way. Sometimes he touches, sometimes he speaks, sometimes he waits, but he always responds, even when you can't feel it, even when everything looks dead, even when the answer comes in a form you didn't expect. You see, faith isn't proven when the miracle comes. It's proven while you wait. So what are you waiting for? Healing, direction, restoration? Don't confuse silence with absence. Don't let delay poison your hope. Some miracles are planted deep in the soil of time, and they bloom at exactly the moment they're meant to, not a second too soon or too late. Jesus is never in a hurry, but he's never careless. Your story isn't on pause, it's being written. Every chapter, every tear, every unanswered prayer is ink in his hands. And maybe this waiting season is not about what you're losing, but about what you're learning, about who you're becoming, about how your faith is being refined, not to impress others, but to hold the weight of the miracle coming. So if you've been in the silence, in the stillness, in the waiting room of heaven, don't give up. Write in the comments, right now, this declaration of hope. I am hearing his voice. Say it not because everything makes sense, but because you believe he's still working. If this spoke to something deep inside you, like this video, subscribe, not out of routine, but to stay connected to a message that refuses to let your heart go cold. Because in the delay, he is still present. In the silence, he is still speaking. And when the time is right, the stone will be rolled away and life will rise again. There's a heaviness we carry that has nothing to do with what's around us and everything to do with what's within us. Wounds that never healed, words we never forgot, wrongs we still carry like chains wrapped around our soul. And sometimes the heaviest burdens are the ones we refuse to forgive. But then Jesus steps into the scene, not as someone who tells us to just get over it, but as someone who embodies forgiveness, as someone who absorbed betrayal, hatred, violence, and still chose love. He doesn't speak about forgiveness as an idea, he lives it. Imagine him hanging on a cross, his flesh torn, his friends scattered, his enemies mocking, the air thick with the scent of injustice. And yet, he opens his mouth, not to curse, not to condemn, but to intercede. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. How do you say that when your body is broken and your heart is bleeding? Only if you understand a truth deeper than revenge. That forgiveness doesn't excuse what was done. It releases you from its power. It's not about letting someone off the hook. It's about cutting the rope that's keeping you tied to pain that's already in the past. Jesus knew the cost of bitterness, knew that if we don't forgive, we become prisoners to our own hurt. So he taught and showed that true freedom starts where resentment ends. In Matthew 18, Peter asks Jesus, "How many times should I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times. Jesus answers, not 7 times, but 77 times. That wasn't a math lesson. That was a heart revolution. He was saying forgiveness isn't a count, it's a lifestyle. It's not about being a doormat. It's about refusing to be chained by someone else's actions. He follows this with the parable of the unmerciful servant, a man forgiven of an impossible debt by his master, only to turn around and choke another man who owed him a fraction of that amount. The story ends with the master confronting the servant, reminding him of the mercy he received and how he failed to give it. Jesus' message is clear. When we've been forgiven much, we are called to forgive much. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Forgiveness can feel like betrayal of our own pain, like saying what happened doesn't matter. But that's not what Jesus teaches. He doesn't tell you to pretend it didn't hurt. He tells you, bring the hurt to me. Because when you hold on to offense, you let the past lead your future. But when you forgive, you take the power back. You reclaim your joy, your peace, your freedom. Think of Joseph, sold by his own brothers, left for dead, imprisoned unjustly. Years later, he stands in power, and instead of revenge, he chooses reconciliation. He tells them, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. He forgave not because they deserved it, but because God transformed the pain. And that's the secret. Jesus doesn't ask you to forgive in your own strength. He gives you the grace to do it. Maybe you've been waiting for the person to say, I'm sorry. Maybe they never will. But healing isn't about them, it's about you. And the more you forgive, the more like Jesus you become. Let me ask you, who are you still chained to? What memory still pierces your heart when you close your eyes? What name still makes your chest tighten? Now imagine placing that name, that moment, that pain, into Jesus' hands. He doesn't just understand forgiveness, he is forgiveness. And when he lives in you, so does the power to release what's breaking you. So today, let go. Not because they earned it, but because you're ready to be free. If this stirred something deep within you, if you felt the Holy Spirit whispering as you listened, write this in the comments now. This word is for me. Let the words you type be a declaration of release, of peace, of trust in a God who sees every hidden wound and is still whispering, come to me and I will give you rest. Share this video with someone you know is still holding on to something that's hurting them. You may not know the battles they fight in silence, but this message could be the very key to their breakthrough. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, not for content but for community, for constant reminders that your soul was never meant to carry the weight alone. Like this video if forgiveness still feels hard, but you're willing to take the first step, because every step toward forgiveness is a step closer to the heart of Jesus, and in his heart, there is no chain that can't be broken. There are moments when the silence of heaven feels unbearable, when prayers echo back like whispers in an empty room, when it seems like the very God who once felt close is now nowhere to be found. It's in these moments, these valleys of unanswered questions and unseen progress, that many feel their faith begin to tremble. But what if the silence isn't abandonment, but strategy? What if your suffering isn't proof of divine distance, but evidence of a deeper work, one that only pain could ever prepare you for? Jesus never promised a life without storms, but he promised he'd be in the boat when they hit. The cross wasn't the end, it was the passageway. The Garden of Gethsemane wasn't weakness, it was surrender. And in that surrender, Jesus gave suffering a new definition, not a punishment, not a curse, but a pathway to glory. In John 16:33, he said, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. He didn't say you might have trouble, he said you will, but he also said you'd never face it alone. Because Jesus doesn't just meet you in the celebration, he walks with you through the ashes. Think of Job, a man who lost everything, his wealth, his family, his health. His friends questioned his faith. His wife told him to curse God. And yet in the deepest moment of his despair, Job says something unforgettable. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. It's easy to trust when things make sense, but real faith, that's what's left after the questions echo and there's no answer. Because in that silence, God is not still. He's working, molding, refining, setting the foundation for something that cannot be shaken. The story of the blind man in John 9 shows us this beautifully. The disciples asked Jesus, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" But Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." In other words, what looks like a curse may be the very canvas God is painting his glory on. How many times have you begged for the pain to stop, only to look back and realize that it birthed something in you that comfort never could? Compassion, depth, resilience, a voice for others, a faith that can't be faked. Jesus himself, though perfect, was made complete through suffering. Hebrews 5:8 tells us, though he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. If even the Son of God was shaped by suffering, how much more might our own pain carry divine purpose? We're not called to enjoy pain, but we are called to walk through it. And with Jesus, no pain is wasted. The bleeding woman who touched Jesus' robe had suffered for 12 years. Doctors failed her. Society rejected her. But in one moment, one step of faith, Jesus turns and says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." He didn't just heal her body, he restored her identity. He called her daughter, because when Jesus touches your suffering, it doesn't just end, it transforms. It becomes a testimony, a beacon, a sacred scar that says, "I survived. What should have destroyed me?" What are you carrying today that feels too heavy? What wound still bleeds in silence? What night has lasted longer than you ever thought you could endure? Here's the truth. Jesus is not waiting at the finish line. He's walking with you in every step of the process. When you cry, he listens. When you break, he holds. When you fall, he stays. And when you come out of that valley, you won't just come out stronger, you'll come out new. So lean into the pain, not away from it. Let Jesus show you what only suffering can reveal, that he is enough. That his grace is not a theory, it's a lifeline. If you're still breathing, your story isn't over. If you're still here, the plan is still unfolding. And sometimes the very tears that wet your pillow at night water the seeds of your destiny. If this truth is breaking through your darkness today, write in the comments right now, "I know he hears me." Let that be your declaration of trust in the silence. Like this video if you've been through something you didn't think you'd survive, but you're still here. Subscribe if you're done walking through pain alone. This is more than a channel. It's a gathering of those who refuse to give up. And share this with someone who needs to know that their suffering isn't meaningless, that Jesus still writes beautiful stories with broken pieces. Because in his hands, even your wounds become weapons of light, and the darkest night is always just before the dawn. There's a quiet kind of battle that rages within the hearts of believers. It's not always seen, it's rarely spoken aloud, but it's real and it's raw. It's the battle of faith against doubt, of belief against the heaviness of life's disappointments. You may not say it out loud, but perhaps you've whispered it in the dark. God, where are you? Why didn't you stop it? I trusted you, but everything still fell apart. These are not signs of weakness. They are the echoes of a soul that still longs for truth, still hopes that the voice it once heard in peace can be heard again in chaos. Even the strongest saints wrestled with doubt. John the Baptist, who boldly proclaimed Jesus as the Messiah, later sat in a prison cell and asked, "Are you the one, or should we expect someone else?" This was the man who baptized the Son of God, who saw the heavens open, and yet, in chains and shadows, he questioned everything. And what did Jesus do? He didn't rebuke John. He didn't shame him. He simply sent back the evidence. Tell John what you see. The blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed. Jesus didn't answer with an explanation. He answered with a reminder. Even when you don't feel it, the work continues. Even when your prison is dark, the kingdom is moving. Doubt doesn't disqualify you, but hiding it might. Because doubt is not the opposite of faith, it's a part of it. Real faith isn't pretending everything is perfect. Real faith is trusting when nothing makes sense. It's saying, I don't understand, but I still believe. There's something sacred about clinging to God with white knuckles, refusing to let go, even when the answers don't come. Thomas, forever labeled Doubting Thomas, wasn't scorned by Jesus. Instead, Jesus came to him, showed him the scars, invited him to touch the very wounds that proved his resurrection. Jesus meets us in our doubt, not with anger, but with tenderness. Because he knows how fragile the heart can be when it's been bruised by hope deferred. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." If you feel like your faith is flickering, like your prayers are being sent into the void, know this: Jesus doesn't need your strength, he just wants your surrender. Even a whisper of faith moves mountains. Even a trembling hand reaching out is enough for him to grab hold. When Peter began to sink, walking on the waves, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" And immediately Jesus reached out and caught him. He didn't let Peter drown. He never intended to. And he won't let you drown either. You may feel like your story is falling apart, but what if it's actually being rewritten into something more honest, more beautiful, more true? Jesus doesn't just build faith in the fire. Sometimes he builds it in the aftermath, in the quiet spaces where all we have is his promise. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. If you're walking through doubt right now, say this in the comments with all your heart. Speak to me, Lord. Say it not because you feel strong, but because you're brave enough to still reach. Like this video if you've ever felt like giving up, but something or someone kept you holding on. Subscribe if you need reminders like this. If you want to walk with others who know what it means to cry out and still trust. And share this message with someone who might be questioning everything. Because your courage to be vulnerable could help restore someone's faith. You are not weak. You are not a disappointment. You are a warrior in the spirit, still standing even with shaking knees. And Jesus sees you. Faith isn't proven in the absence of doubt. It's proven when you still choose to believe, especially when believing is the hardest thing to do. Let that faith carry you, even if it's just enough for today. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when the heart breaks, but not from pain. It breaks open. And what spills out is not weakness, but the raw and untamed strength of someone who has truly encountered Jesus, not just as a figure of history, not just as a symbol of religion, but as the living teacher who bends time to meet us in our chaos. You may have followed this far thinking you were just curious, or maybe desperate, or trying to hold on to a fragment of hope. But now, right now, something deeper is stirring in you, because the teachings of Jesus are not just information, they are invitation. And here's what most people miss. Every lesson Jesus gave, every parable, every moment of silence, every question he asked, it was never just about understanding. It was about transformation, and it always began in the places people least expected. It's easy to look at the miracles and miss the method. We want the blind eyes opened, the dead raised, the storms calmed. But how did those moments begin? With confusion, with questions, with pain. The blind man was sitting in the dust, invisible to society, when Jesus stopped. The woman bleeding for 12 years had been forgotten, outcast, humiliated. Yet one touch of Jesus' garment rewrote her story. The storm that terrified seasoned fishermen became the very stage for a sleeping Savior to reveal that peace isn't the absence of waves, but the presence of one who controls them. And here is the great secret that ties all of Jesus' teachings together. The message beneath every message: you are not forgotten, you are not disqualified, and what you thought was your ending is actually your introduction to something eternal. We often ask, why doesn't God speak to me like he spoke in the Bible? But what if he already is? through the words of Jesus, preserved not just in ink, but in spirit. When Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest," he wasn't offering a moment of peace, he was offering a life of it. When he taught us to forgive, to bless our enemies, to love those who hurt us, he wasn't asking us to be naive. He was showing us how to be free, because the real chains we carry aren't always visible. They're made of resentment, shame, fear, and the quiet belief that we're too broken to matter anymore. But Jesus never called the perfect, he called the willing. He didn't come to add religion to our wounds. He came to pour oil and wine on them, to restore what was lost, to revive what was dying, and to awaken what had been asleep in us for too long. You thought you needed strength, but all you needed was surrender. You thought you had to prove your worth, but he already proved his love. And what if I told you that right now, yes, this very moment, he is closer than your breath, listening not to your words, but to the silent ache beneath them. This is the spiritual climax, the moment where the teachings stop being theory and start becoming the very breath that fills your lungs, the fire that reignites your heart. You've walked through pain, you've wrestled with doubt, you've carried questions no one else knew about, but now you see, it wasn't for nothing. You were never walking alone. Every step was leading here. To the moment you stop surviving and start living. To the moment Jesus doesn't just teach you, he transforms you. So breathe. Let the tears fall if they come. Let your guard down. Because the king who washed feet and wept at tombs is not ashamed of your mess. He kneels in it beside you, ready to wash away what the world said would always define you. And if this truth is hitting something deep inside, say it in the comments. Right now, I know he hears me. Not because you're trying to be spiritual, but because you've seen it now. You've felt it, like this video to keep the fire going. Share it with someone who's almost out of faith, out of strength, out of reasons to keep believing. And subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the journey. Because every time you come back, it's not just content, it's a conversation between your soul and the one who knows it best. The greatest teaching of Jesus is this: love has not forgotten you. Mercy still calls your name, and grace is not a theory, it's a person. You've made it this far, and let me say, very few do. Most of us lose patience, we turn away, we give in to distractions, but not you. You've stayed, listening, reflecting, letting these words settle in your soul. And in doing so, you've embarked on something sacred, something that will change your life, one moment, one step, one word at a time. You see, it's not about how fast you get to the answer, it's about the journey itself. It's about who you become as you walk with Jesus through every storm, every moment of doubt, every heartache, and every victory. What you've experienced here today is more than just knowledge. This has been a transformation, a shift in your heart, a stirring of your spirit. The teachings of Jesus aren't just lessons for your mind. They are the very compass of your soul, guiding you through life's darkest days and into its most radiant moments. But there's something I want you to understand. This transformation is not complete just because you've watched a video. This is an invitation to step deeper into a relationship with Him, an invitation to not just hear His words, but to live them every day, in every choice you make, in every relationship you nurture, in every moment of stillness and every rush of life. So, what now? Well, the first step is simple. Acknowledge that you are part of something much bigger than yourself. This isn't just a channel, this isn't just a video, and this isn't just a moment in time. This is the beginning of a lifelong walk with Jesus. Now, as you reflect on all you've heard, ask yourself, how will I respond to this calling? How will the teachings of Jesus change the way I live today? The way I love, the way I forgive, the way I see myself and others? The transformation isn't over, and it doesn't stop here. It keeps going, one decision at a time, one prayer at a time, one act of obedience at a time. And I'm asking you to make one final decision today, to respond, to make a declaration of your own transformation. I want you to comment below the phrase, "I listened to the end." This is not just a comment, it is a declaration. It's an acknowledgement that you've heard his voice, that you've been touched by his presence, and that you're ready to walk forward in the truth he's revealed to you today. And I want you to share this message with someone else. Don't let this journey be just yours. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, who needs to know that transformation is possible, that renewal is waiting, that Jesus is calling their name. Because here's the truth. You are part of a living community. This isn't about numbers or followers. It's about a movement of hearts, of souls, of lives being renewed. And when you subscribe, when you comment, when you share, you're not just engaging with content, you're engaging with something eternal. You're engaging with the body of Christ, the living and breathing church that refuses to be silent in the face of despair. So, as you prepare to leave this video, don't rush. Stay with me for a moment longer. Just take a deep breath. Let the silence settle in. Let the weight of what you've heard and felt today sink into your soul. I want you to listen to him, to his still small voice. Close your eyes if you can and ask him this simple question. Lord, what do you want me to do with what I've learned today? And then listen, because the answers, the guidance, the peace you're seeking, they're already within you. He's already spoken to you. He's already leading you. This is not the end of the journey. This is just the beginning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for choosing to listen. You are part of something incredibly powerful, and together we are walking this journey toward transformation, healing, and renewal. Now, as you go, may you always remember this. You are seen, you are heard, you are loved. And no matter where life takes you, he is with you, now and forever. I didn't leave because something kept me here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. You're not just watching a video, you're becoming part of a living faith that changes the world. Go in peace and never forget you are loved.